brothers.
Om yo brahmanan vidabhati purvam, yo vaivedamsya prahino hitasmai, tanhadeva atmabuddhi prakasha, mumukshurvai sharnamaham prapadye. Om shantihi shantihi shantihi. That one formless presence, out of which sprang the Trinity at the beginning of a cosmic cycle of time, and who delivered the four Vedas unto Lord Brahma, who is the eternal bridge to immortality, who is partless, faultless, actionless, and divine, who resembles fire that has consumed all its fuel. I go for refuge to that one Supreme Brahman, whose light turns the attention of mankind to the Atman, the indivisible self within. Om Satyena. Om Satyena labhyastapassa yesa atma samyagyanena brahmacharena nityam antaha sharirehi jyotirmayohi shubhraha yam pashanti atayaha kinadoshaha. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. The Atman, the indivisible self in all beings and all things, is realized by knowledge, by moderation, by austerities, and by veracity. All of these constantly cultivated. When mental impurities dissolve due to this practice, then the seer beholds it everywhere, existing everywhere and in everything, even here in this very life and body. Om peace, peace, peace. Om Sahana. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanao Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karabo Vahai Tejasvi Navaditamastu Ma Vidvesho Vahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May Brahman, divine reality, protect us. May Brahman sustain us. May Brahman illumine our thinking process. May we not find fault with each other, with the world, or with the teachings. And may what we study be a source of inspiration to us eternally. Om peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, and may peace be unto all. Om Hari Om. And so we meet on Sunday, our second class of this particular Dharma visit, after having our beautiful puja to Mother Kali last night. As you were able to see, Mother Kali rode up with us from San Francisco in our car on our drive, because she used to be situated there at the San Francisco ashram shrine, which is now gone into a subtle state. We'll talk more about that at the meeting after the class today. And so she is now situated downstairs on our altar and received a beautiful garland made by one of our devotees that fit her just perfectly, garland of red roses, and was worshipped, because as we were finding out before class began, and welcome to the live streaming audience, that Ramakrishna says you must believe in the divine presence in the image. And it's part of what we'll look at today in looking at these slokas of the Akshi Upanishad. Akshi means like point, that point, third eye, Akshidham, Bindu. And so in that Upanishad we're finding out many of the secrets of the Upanishads and Vedas, which, as we just heard, were granted by that divine formless presence at the beginning of a cosmic cycle. The Trinity is Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, and Brahma is traditionally four-faced, always chants the four Vedas. You can see, as we started out yesterday with this, I always show a kind of roadmap for inner life here for the Vedantists, because Vedanta really means Upanishad. Anta, end of the Vedas, the end of the portion of the Vedas is the Upanishads. 108 right now in this particular cycle of time, probably thousands written, or better said, maybe brought into existence via the illumined mind and then written down much later. They were into recitation and sadhyaya, and like we were just doing before class and so forth. And they're also into teaching their children without books and just call and response, as we're calling it nowadays. And so the Upanishads were uttered after they were drawn from a silent place deep within, where they rest eternally in Sahaja Tantra Siddhanta fashion. They're an established conclusion beyond time. And so you have to reach towards a timeless space inside of yourself, which is where we left off yesterday with this chart on Holy Mother. She was talking about the three necessary factors in the attainment of enlightenment. And we must say that she's talking about krama mukti here. That is a gradual enlightenment. That is krama mukti from an active sadhaka. Because we found out yesterday in the sloka we took up, as a result of meritorious actions, the righteous sadhaka passes his time in the delights of detachment, repeatedly studying the positive shastras, the main texts, or the revealed scriptures, we like to say. Those Bhagavad Gita, Upanishads, as they fall, in 108 of them today, 10 or 11 of them commented on by Shankara in a recent age, or underlined there. And we're studying the Akshi Upanishad, which you can see falls in the Yajur Veda, or the Krishna Yajur Veda, because the Yajur Veda is divided into two sections. It has a lot of Upanishads, so we studied just last weekend the Tripuras Upanishad. Tripura means the triple city. So Divine Mother has this triple city waiting for you if you take the mantra and recite it. When you get the mantra, that's the first city, and then when you recite it for 10, 20, 30 years, that's the pathway that takes you into the second city, the subtle city. And then there's the third city, which is transcendent. And I remember my teacher telling me when he gave me the mantra that this would be revealed to me in time. The mantra would, you would speak it with your mind, give your energy, as the songs in India say, water those seeds of the mantra with the tears of your devotion and your longing and your yearning. We looked at that yesterday in terms of mumukshutvam. Pretty soon the devotee reaches a real desire for freedom from all bondages. It's a kind of world weariness that comes upon people, and if they don't have a path, a teacher, and a method, then they tend to fall back into a kind of depressed state. And so the Tripura Upanishad, in glowing terms last weekend, we found out more about our mantra and its three cities. How everything really is in a word, or in the beginning was the word, however you want to put that. Everything goes back to this mantra, and some of the people I can see here in the room here, the dozen of us that have gathered today, have had direct experience with the mantra. It's been a savior for them in times of trial and suffering. And well, it should be, but then of course we want it to lead to stability. Remember, we had that word in the chart yesterday, and a universal mind beyond stability. So when that happens, the mantra has actually begun to do its work of refinement on consciousness. It's a universal yoga. It might as well be a fifth yoga, sometimes we say, because it's shared by the bhaktas, by the gyanis, by the yogis, and by the tantrasists. They all have a deep love relationship with the mantra, with the word. And that's why if you're talking about words and God and the goddess, you have to then all of a sudden sing something like Vani Saraswati Vakdevi Bhagavati Parvati Mampahi Vinapani Hamsavahini Vedanta Rupini Pulayamam Vani Saraswati Vakdevi Bhagavati Parvati Mampahi. You have to think about the word, then you think about the Sanskrit word for word is Vak. And so she has the name Vakdevi given to her by the rishis. They meditate upon her and remember her from lifetime to lifetime. And then she appears to them as the mantra and the meaning of the mantra, the meaning of words, the meaning of letters, and how letters hold within them her divine power, which is why last night we were singing Monopoli Bhajakari Icha Hoy Torjaya Chari Guru Datta Moha Mantra Divanishi japa kori mono boli bhajakali. Mahamantra, that's the great mantra of all the ages that you get when you receive Mother Mantra, which cuts through all barriers. And inside of you, in these three cities, there are three great barriers that keep beings from trespassing into an area that they're not qualified to go yet. So you have inner life, all of this opens up, it's all inner worship. Outer worship first, that's the first city. Like Ramakrishna mentioning today in the Gospel, that you're going to need to realize that there's divinity in the objects. And we don't do that, you see. In this day and age, particularly in this country, we have all sorts of other reasons to covet, love, or attach to objects. But we don't consider things around us divine and look at them with divine eyes. Or speak about them with divine words. Have a divine relationship with them. Because objects are just, in India, they always have been seen as a representation of Brahman. So they may not be Brahman as far as pure conscious awareness not being able to evolve in them, but they sprung out of pure conscious awareness like the Trinity did. And when the Trinity gave rise to the worlds, then all objects had to come forth at some particular point. First as seeds in deep sleep, then as dreams in dreaming state, and finally as objects in waking state. So when you're looking at objects, you're actually looking at the furthest manifestation of the word, away from the word. All objects, whether it be chairs or babies or human bodies or whatever it is, they all have words for them. There's meanings to those words, and there's a lot of power, Shakti power in all of them. So we have to consider objects sacred, and you can do that in different ways. Tantra wants to deify them. But yoga, as you'll see in a minute when I show this chart, thinks about it in terms of they can actually be a kind of samadhi, like in the Upanishads. The corn is showering bliss upon us. Our children are showering bliss upon us. So they're not just having these commonplace experiences from things around them. They're really living fully in a conscious, fully manifested, unalloyed, uninterrupted state of bliss, like I found my teacher. Of course, it's easier to get to that if you renounce the world externally. But we heard from the Gospel before class started that all people can't do that. It's the monastic way. So then what's the way for us? A slower, gradual way, like Krama Mukti kind of way. Because the West, as my teacher said, has yet to produce one Jivan Mukta. That is a living, liberated soul. Where is that soul? We produce scientists and intellectuals and geniuses and things like that, all in the intellectual frame of reference. But where's the great light that's coming out of us? It's still coming out of India every age, sometimes by dozens, and has been because they continue to court this relationship with divine things, seeing everything as divine, seeing all as Brahman. The four great statements in India, Tatvamasi, Aham Brahmasmi, Ayamatma Brahma, and Pragyanam Brahma. Is basically all this is Brahman, and that thou art too, is kind of the implication of it. Although speak about commentaries, there are commentaries on end on each one of these Mahavakyas. There's that word vak again. So the great statements, the great utterances are to help you awaken the mind and live in a state of well, as our founder Lex Sixon used to call it, yogic insomnia. You're in a sleepless state all the time. The body may sleep, but your mind stays awake. It can't sleep anymore because it's met a man from the land who came from a land that never sleeps. My teacher used to chant that song. A man has come to me from a land that never sleeps. Now all my dreams have been turned into radiant meditations. So everything had become a meditation. If that had to happen from the outside in, then I would have had to have taken the external. and melded it with the internal, and then made one state out of them, meditated on that state, and then passed my time contentedly and became free, because I got rid of all separations. And the sloka that's coming up that we can study here says that much. It's a really powerful one, actually. Enjoyments and non-enjoyments are dread diseases. Possessions are great disasters. All contexts just promote separation. Sufferings are diseases of thoughts. Now you can see, whether you like it or not, or agree with it or not, how they thought and how they produced a golden age in India with many, many avatars, not just one son of God or one avatar, but continually coming out of that realization that had been produced in them by stripping away everything, by rendering everything empty, until they could see the fullness inside of it, because fullness is covered by as we were saying yesterday in class, by the covering power of Shakti. As soon as you take a form and a name, you've covered the truth. As soon as you get into time, the truth is covered. As soon as you enter space, the truth is covered. And that's not your fault. See, that's cosmic covering power. So they noted that. The problem with covering power is that if you recognize it, and then you can be a witness to it, you see, and then go on with your life and so forth. But there's a distorting power that comes with it. So if Ramakrishna parts the green scum on the lake and tells his devotee, look, you can see yourself now. You know, you couldn't see yourself before. But so that's covering power. It's natural to the lake in a certain season. That season is called human ignorance. See, when it's upon us, and the effort to part that green scum is the sadhakas. You know, a desire to be free of that covering power and to see everything as Brahman. And then there's another problem there, is that as you're leaning over, you drop some foreign objects into that beautiful view of yourself, fall off yourself. See, and then there's some ripples and stuff. So you're seeing a distorted version of yourself. You have to wait, silent, peace, meditation, till it all clears up again. It's sort of like Sri Ramakrishna said, the mind is like a big mud puddle, you see. So, but all the mud over time has just settled down. So the silt, you see. So you don't want to stick a stick in there and stir it all up again. You'll have to wait for like days for that silt to settle again. So there's a great efficacy then to keeping the mind in a sattvic state. And we looked at that yesterday with the Progress to Freedom chart, when we saw that the gunas, another way of saying covering power, distorting power, and don't forget revealing power. Because there has to be a third way out, or an opposite to the problem. So she gets in and reveals things through words. That's why people like knowledge, because it gets rid of their ignorance. And the problem with ignorance, as we were stating yesterday, is that it's all knowing after. You see, you come into the world, you know nothing. You're just a baby. You grow up, depending on what society you're in and who your parents are. Here, not dharmic, you know, they don't know about dharma yet, this part of the world, or maybe even in India, dharma has become covered to a great extent. So you come into the world and you have to find out everything after. So you grow up a little bit, you find out what your name is, which is of course somebody prefabricated it for you and laid it on you. And you found out what gender you were, and you found out various things about yourself. And those things you found out, number one, were all about the non-self, which they were telling you is yourself, means your body. And number two, you found out and they told you, now you know, you see. So your ignorance on that level was stripped away and replaced by sort of a half knowledge. And so now you say, now I know, and the ego gets a hold of it, says, now I'm a knower, and I know this, I know more than you, or I know nothing, whatever the case may be. And so it reinforces the idea that you're not perfect in the first place, you see. So all of the covering power reinforces this idea of your imperfection, when you never were imperfect. You never had ignorance. You never had birth and death. You never had a body. Those were all, if you want to be kind, those were all just add-ons to this pure conscious awareness that is your true nature. And so upstairs this morning, I'm just sitting there and thinking about the class and what had to be said and so forth. My eyes fell on this paper bag in the chair. It says, "Simple truth," is what it said. I said, that's the simple truth of the matter right there. That's Advaita. That's Zen. That's Mahamudra. That's all these, the essence of all these religions is right there in those few sentences. But as Sri Ramakrishna was saying before we started class, in the reading of the Gospel, you're going to have to put forth some effort in this day and age, and in this state of things, means physical, in order to see through the coverings. And that's what the sadhaka does. And then what happens? He fixes his mind steadily on the truthful import of the teachings and recites the spiritual texts and visits the hermitages of the ascetics, like you've walked in here. You might as well have walked in, 3,000 or 4,000 years ago to this place and been sitting here listening to a rishi talk about these things. And he then expends his healthy life seated on a bed of stone or a slab, diverting himself with ramblings in the forest made beautiful by his placid mind. So it doesn't sound like he's looking at the world as a problem, but his austerity is stripping away all problems. If he doesn't keep that going, problems come. Chit happens. You see, as we say, chit means thought. So out of all thought comes all these problems. You see, if you don't have thought, that's avritti. Yoga says keep your mind free from projections. Otherwise, if you project things, then enjoyments and non-enjoyments are both dread diseases. Possessions are great disasters. All contacts promote only separation, and sufferings are just diseases of your thoughts. So it's back to the Tripura Sundari Upanishad, you see. Either you take up permanent residence in her city, or you cycle in the three worlds. If you have Mother and Mother Mantra, then you've extracted yourself from the process with your ancestors. It says right here, it says so. And you're not desiring rebirth anymore. Out of what? What was yesterday, what was the word? That everything here is based on desire. It's all desire. So if you can fulfill your desires in the Dharma, then you can be free of this world. That's your last birth, she says here. That's your last birth. In ignorance. You could take a body on again. We see great souls doing that, but they're not suffering ignorance. They're not looking everything as separations. See, they're not causing rifts in everything. In fact, Samanvaya Mahacharya Yugadharma Swarupinam, the one who saw that all dharmas in this age are from one source, is Samanvaya with them. He's bringing them all together and coalescing them, see, into one great religion. And so that's the great path with the great sayings and the great dharma behind it, and with all the avatars, and with the Trinity infusing with their very life breath and life blood the world with the Upanishads, you see, is a song Vivekananda wrote. And so they're putting their very life essence into everything here, so to help people awaken from this illusion that everything is finite, that everything is not divine, and that we have to be always facing off with problems every day of our life, and not being in peace, peace, peace. And that's why we say peace, peace, peace for that triple world, Bhur, Bhuva, Swaha, see, because it needs it. But if you're in Mother's Tripura city, you're saying peace, peace, it's already upon you, you see. You don't have to ask for it. You've taken up permanent residence in her eternal city. That's her feet right there. Now you want to get to her heart, and then you want to get to her great mind, the three great cities. And Mantra is right there to help you affect it. You just have to have faith in it and recite it. And hopefully you put some knowledge together with it. The words have meanings, you know. Om Namah Shivaya, what does that mean, and so forth. You have to look into it. So all of this is a kind of whetting of our philosophical and spiritual appetites to get us back into the tone and tenor that we left off with yesterday. If you remember, we did look in accordance with Sloka 19, one's perception of reality becomes clear only in due course of time. So she's talking about, you're not talking about a soul like Shankara, who at 8 years old remembered everything about his past lifetimes in 700 AD. See, everything came back to him. All the scriptures, all of a sudden on the end of the tongue of that little boy. The people were amazed, you see. Not so amazed as we would be here, but nonetheless, you know, that's how India has had so many Jesuses come. And beings of different character too, not just having to work with fishermen and wake them up, but having to work with great minds who had already figured out most of the problems of relativity. And then this great soul comes and, you know, just awakens like that. At 12 he left home and he was teaching graybeards in his teens and passed away at 32. So he like jammed it all into just one 32-year period and did commentaries on some of the Upanishads. We wish he had lived longer for our sake. So maybe we would get more of his commentaries on these Upanishads. But what we do have is extremely valuable and a really deep peek into another age. We also get that window by Holy Mother, who, I mean, where do you find a woman who is at the head of one of the major religious organizations of the world? And she was that way from a very young age when Sri Ramakrishna passed, and she was worshipped by saints and sages. This humble village woman, as they say, was worshipped by saints and sages. So she's a special boon to us. And if you got the mantra through SRV, through this provisional teacher I like to call myself, then you got it straight from her, because she gave it to my teacher and he gave it to me. So you trace your lineage back. Hopefully that will keep you from tracing the origin of your body back, you see, to a Big Bang or something, because that's in physical level only. You can only go back so far to where you were even standing upright. So cycles of billions and billions of years going on eternally does not occur to physicists. You have to have an assignment on it, and a shelf life, and a beginning and a middle and an end. But it's the first thing Krishna tells Arjuna on the battlefield. There's no beginning, middle, and end to anything. This is ongoing. Consciousness is ongoing. So it's just a matter of whether consciousness is associated with forms or not. And admittedly, most of the seers want you in a formless state. In India, India doesn't make any bones about it. You know, why did you come here? What's your business here? And as Buddha said, wear this body for the last time. So it's something to think about for us in this day and age. Now, we looked at the three main factors. She calls it karma, sadhana, and kala. I put it in English mostly, but karma is a word that might as well be English now. We just have to understand it in a deeper way. There's a beam of pure conscious awareness, you see, that produced such a soul as Sri Sharda Devi, the Holy Mother. And she told us yesterday that kala, sadhana, and karma are the three factors that lead us towards enlightenment in stages, like avastas they're called. Sri Ramakrishna taught by avastas, because people can't just jump to the highest step, he said. If you were a good high jumper, you might be able to do that, but you'd never know what the middle steps were made of, so you wouldn't be of any use to anyone else. And it's true, some people who come into this world and just are fully enlightened and take one look at it and give up the body and go back to enlightenment, they're useless to us. So most people like not the Videha Muktis who get beyond bodies, they like the Jivan Muktis, because they come in and suffer with you, you see. They come in and go through the process with you, even though they know processes are all nonsense. Coming and going, that's all mere nonsense, Vivekananda said. Where's the time when the soul will come, when all of time is in the soul? Where's the space where the soul will come to when all of space is in the soul? So you're just running around inside yourself. And you can't be any other way. Consciousness is interior to you, and that's your true nature. The sooner you find that out, the sooner you'll sit still. And even if your body isn't still, your mind will be still, and it'll tell the body, go there, go there, go there, and come back and see it all as nonsense. See? You're not going to help the world at all with anything you do. The world is the world. So Swamiji told us, no such thing as a good world. It's like saying hot ice. The world is created from a mind that contains good, bad, and mixed. And since it was created from that mind, the effects of it will be good, bad, and mixed. And they'll also be constantly changing between those things. So that's why you back off and give it up. And for the householder, you would do that in here. Oh, I see, it's all a changing morass of factors, and so I must witness those. To be most effective in the world. If I really want to help the world, what I'm saying is I help people get out of the world, because they're thinking that they're earth, air, fire, water, and ether with tasting, touching, hearing, seeing, and smelling attached to them, and they're trying to get pleasure out of that relationship, but they're not trying to see the objects as divine manifestations. So it's not for the sake of the husband that the husband's loved. It's the sake of the Atman in the husband that the husband is loved. It's not for the sake of the wife that the wife is loved. It's the sake of the Atman in the husband, in the wife that the wife is loved. It's not for the sake of the baby that the baby is loved. It's for the sake of the Atman in the baby. Who said that? He might have repeated it. The source is Yajnavalkya in the Upanishad. He had two wives. One of them was spiritual and one was worldly. So he should know. See? It's not for the sake of any of this that the wives are loved. It's for the sake of the Atman and the wives. So we're just reading in the Gospel, you see there, Sri Ramakrishna got really unhappy one day because Hridaya had some malady or something, and he had served him all his life. Hridaya, I think, was the one that came up to him and said, you just love those young boys, you see. That's an attachment, you shouldn't have it. So Ramakrishna was like stung with that. So he went inside and asked Mother Kali, is that true what Hridaya said? That I just love the young boys, and it's attachment? And she told him, no, don't listen to things like that. If you didn't see the Atman in them, you wouldn't love them. So, I mean, it's a very clear, precise gauge here between true love and false love. If you use that gauge and apply it to everything, the same measure that you apply to yourself, Krishna says in the Gita, then you'll never run afoul of the process. You see, you'll know exactly where your foibles are and where your mistakes are. If a worldly person makes 10,000 mistakes, then a spiritual person only makes 1,000, Vivekananda said, because this world is all about mistakes. When you took on a body and parents, that was your first mistake. All disease is of the mind. So the diseases that came later, the pains that came later, they were in your head before you projected the body. So naturally, you have to be careful, because they're seed words. Cancer. I mean, we have 2 people right now suffering cancer in our Sangha. So, heart disease, diabetes, all these things they've got words for that. And they started inside your mind. All disease originates in the mind. And if you knew this, you wouldn't be looking for outer cures and depending upon this. You'd try and go to the inner source and cut it off. You wouldn't water that seed. Like, say, with brooding or fear or doubt or false belief or conventional methods. See, I think I'll just take my mind and subject it to the mantra for 20 years and see what happens. See, I think I'll burn the seeds. Well, I'm getting ahead of myself. I'll show you that. But we did look at Kala and Sadhana yesterday. Time, you must recall life's true purpose. If you're sitting here spinning your wheels, then time just floats by. There was a song last night about that, Kali Bol Rashana. The flow of time continually goes by. I think it was Ram Prasad was singing. And your life in the current of time is about to end at any moment. See, and you're pretending that's not going to happen or something. You should be meditating on death. Soon I will not be. See, this will not be. So what will be left over when the body is spat out, as Vivekananda said? What will be left over is my pure conscious awareness and a mind that may produce another body if I'm not careful. Or if it does produce another body, it better produce it in pure conscious awareness and not in ignorance. Because then Maya will get a hold of the process. So she advises, go on retreat, go on pilgrimages. Like we'll go to India early next year. So we've been doing that for 30 years. Every couple of years going to India. Seek out a spiritual path, find a guru, select an ishtam. Ishtam is your chosen ideal, your beloved inside your heart. Take final refuge in God. See, renounce the world, take refuge in God, and fulfill all desires in the dharma. And then you're not leaving any loose ends. See, you're really, like my teacher, Sheshananda, you're not going to have any residue at the end of your life. Anything to worry about or doubt. You'll see the light the minute you take your last breath. That's H-A, by the way. Ha, I, E, La, Hrim, right? We learned that mantra last weekend. That's Sri Pura's own mantra. Sri Vidya mantra, mother mantra. So that last breath is ha, and you'll never take another one again in that body. So that should be a conscious giving away of everything that you took on when you projected the body. Now you're withdrawing it. And it should all be done in the self, by the self. And consciously, free of fear, free of doubt. And she says, as we read last weekend at our retreat, before you go into that highest samadhi, think about me, the Divine Mother. You remember that beautiful quote? Think about me, the Divine Mother. So that's kala, that's time. What you should do with time according to her opinion, if you want to put it that way. Sadhana, practice, worship. Krishna says, what is the greatest austerity of the body? Well, people say, well, hatha yoga, breathing exercises, fasting? No, those are barely even austerities in India. It's worship is the austerity of the body. Bending your body down before the image. Putting your head below the heart, someone said. You see, first time your head gets below your heart is when you bow down, pranam, do the, and so the divinity is in the image. You want to bring it out. Oh, do what's necessary to bring that out. I saw that with Lex Hickson. He's so humble. It would be hard to keep him from bowing to anyone. People that were inferior to him, he would bow to. Lex, quit doing that. It doesn't look right. Didn't matter what Swami he met in India, even if they were the least of Swamis, if such a thing exists, he would run up as soon as he saw them and touch their feet. So he's just like a very interesting childlike soul to be around. So purify the soul via worship. Strengthen the body, mind via yoga. So that's of course 8-limbed yoga. Hone the intellect via study. Memorize the scriptures, as we found out here. Practice japa of the holy mantra. Well, there it is. Perceive God with form. Realize the formless Brahman. So in Ramakrishna order you do both. God is with form, God's without form. So I had another Jewish person approach me recently. I just can't worship form. You see, it's not in me. I really love what Ramakrishna's teachings and all that, but there's no way I can bow before an image or do that. I thought, oh, that's in your tradition, that's okay. Many lifetimes you've been like that. Muslims are also rather like that. So, I would advise doing it anyway, just to break through that maybe aversion you have, or some outdated version of your religion is still foisting upon people, and see what happens. So you might have a great breakthrough, see, and it might free you. You might be ecstatic. You might actually see everything as divine. But in the meantime, if your opinion is, or your perspective is that God is formless and I have to meditate upon that, then you meditate upon your own self as that. Antaryami, the inner ruler immortal seated in your heart. So that's good enough for me, I'll just do that, you see. The outer world can take care of itself. But Sri Ramakrishna said, and I told this to that Jewish person, who said, well, Sri Ramakrishna, he said, I just love Ramakrishna's teachings. But he was a priest in the Kali temple for a while, and he bowed before the image, on and on. I said, yeah, but he also said there's a bell fruit, and the bell fruit has flesh, it has seeds, it has the core, and it has the stem, and the skin. So most people take out those final four and just sell the flesh, right, the fruit vendor. He said, so they weigh the flesh. He said, but I'm not like that. He said, I want the full weight of God. So I weigh everything, flesh, core, seeds, stem, skin, because I want the full weight of the fruit. He said, that's the way I am. So he wants God in its entirety. So obviously this isn't a person who's saying only Brahman is real and everything else is unreal. That was a step along the way called neti neti in Vedanta, or shunyata in Buddhism, emptiness. But you had to do that so that you stripped away your attachment to things. That was the problem. The things themselves were not the problem. See, it was your wrong perception of it, false perception. So he says here, one's perception of reality becomes clear only in due course of time, with the practice that you do. So you're constantly working on your perception. Even the perfected souls are constantly working to keep their minds clear, because dust settles on a mirror, Shankara said. He may have known everything at 8 years of age, but he did sadhana the rest of his life. Number one, because he had to show others they had to do it. If he just was all of a sudden, oh, I'm perfect and pure and everything, and they say, well, why did God favor him and not us, you see? Or he did his sadhana in secret somewhere in another lifetime. Well, it could be true, but the real reason is that he's being an example of you. And he says the second reason is, I'm here, there's a lot of covering power here, a lot of distorting power. I want to keep my mind free of that and see Brahman and everything as clearly as I can possibly see it here. So I do my daily practice. I even offer flowers on the Guru's slippers. There's a story about that. Why do you still do that? One friend said to the other, I heard you got enlightened. Why do you still offer? I could come here to see your enlightened state and you're offering flowers on a Guru's slipper. He said, well, I'm doing that too. I got enlightened, but I still do that too, you see. Did enlightenment somehow change me from, that I was worshiping everything and now I shouldn't? Or did it actually increase my worship? Increase everything? And send me into a state like Sri Ramakrishna is in, eyes rolled up in his head, dancing, falling over if you didn't catch him. See? How about that kind of bliss? So God with form and beyond form, we were right there when we said that. Now let's look at what we didn't look at yesterday, karma vinasha, how to destroy your karma. The word destruction has to be taken sort of tongue-in-cheek. You can't destroy anything because it was never created. It's just, everything is pure and perfect in its inception. If words won't describe it, there's no inception either. So how can I say? But this natural state of illumination that the seers live in, when the karma comes, then they have to send it back to its source. See, out of the mind from which it arose. So they send it back to the mind. They send it scampering, beating a hasty retreat back to the source from which it came. Lust, anger, greed, envy, jealousy, fear, pride, delusion, pride of caste, pride of lineage. All the 6 fetters and the 6 passions and the 8 fetters, they send them back to the seeds from which they sprung out of, because you'll never really destroy them. You could burn those seeds and not come back. See, that would be, but they're still going to exist in the cosmic mind of God. So they could be watered by others, and are, as a matter of fact. So, in order to send karma scampering back to its source, then you want to awaken to the insidious presence of Maya, she says. Sharananda Mai Kali. So you go to the Divine Mother, whose Maya it is, and you ask her to remove it. See, because it's too inscrutable for you, for most people to see. We don't even have a word for it here. Everyone's living in it, but they don't know that they're living in it. Like fish in water. See, gee, does water exist? They don't know. So everyone's living in Maya. What is Maya? Again, name, form, time, space, and karma. And those things have become real to people. My name is such and such. This is my form. I'm of this gender. I'm of this country, of this race. But when Advaita came to Swamiji, and he told her that you're an American or an Indian, or that you're male or female, or that you're intellectual or not. All of those are characteristics of your non-self. Forget them. Concentrate on your Atman and realize your true self. And he heard that from her. He says, forget your personality. Remember your true self. Everything will go much better for you if you do. And then let the personality self just ripen, would be a good word for it. So, I mean, that's another way of saying this. The karmas in Tantra need to ripen. They're called malas. If you're looking at, trying to see the sun through a tree, and leaves and fruit are in the way, you see, then those fruit, you watch them after a while, they ripen and they fall, then you can see the sun. That's the way India thinks of what we call sin. Sins aren't black marks in your soul, they're malas. They're imperfections that you took on so that when they ripened you could see God here. So it's a whole different orientation. You're just waiting for those malas to ripen. So if you want them to ripen quicker, you're going to water the tree, you're going to fertilize the tree, you're going to watch the tree like an Eskimo watches snow conditions to see what happens. And then when a fruit falls, and then you don't run to grab the fruit. We looked at that yesterday. You look at the hole in the tree that you can actually see Shiva now. That's how they say it. When the malas ripen, I can see Shiva. So people came in here assuming coverings, and then they had planned along their lifetime to remove those coverings, but they didn't recognize the insidious presence of Maya, and it began to thicken the coverings, you see. A seer is a selfless person, a non-seer is a selfish person. So the difference between the two is one worked on removing the coverings and one didn't, that's all. The same Atman is behind them, the same light is in everyone, Vedanta says. So those who want to see the truth, they'll be about their sadhana quicker. They want to tear away those veils quicker. Mother's Maya, foisting veils, and they rip them away as soon as they appear, you see. Keeping your mind clear. Somebody was talking about clarified butter at the table last night, you see. I say, that's just butter that went through a lot of Dharma classes. See? So do that with your mind, clarify it. She says, recognize the limitations of name and form in nature. Perceive the suffering-ridden nature of relative existence. That's the first noble truth of Buddha. There is suffering. You can't be a Buddhist unless you adhere to that. And then you can find out the cause for it and take the Eightfold Path and get rid of it. Four Noble Truths are a great system. Subdue sense life by noting the dangers and pleasures of enjoyments, like enjoyments and non-enjoyments. For the householder, the enjoyments become weights. See, for the renunciate, they become weights. See? Because they're worried all about not enjoying anything. You see, or they're worrying whenever they do enjoy, they're guilty, feel guilty for enjoying. You see, So both enjoyment and non-enjoyment is a duality that's a problem. And you see it emphasized in the householder, one of them, and the monk in the other. So no enjoyments and non-enjoyments, both of them have to go, like dread diseases. Break free of the cocoon of family life and mundane human convention. Or, as she says, because she was working mostly with householders, turn it all dharmic. It's not for the sake of the family that the family is loved. It's the sake of the Atman in the family that it's loved. So keep that rule of thumb going, and then you have a dharmic family. And Maya cannot come so close, you see. You keep it at a distance with that filter. I mean, one of Shankara's students actually sings about that too. In verse 5 and 6 of this beautiful stotram, he sings, Yata darpana bhava abasahanam mukam vijam kalpana henam ekam tata diviyoge nirabasa koyaha sanitya palabdis Swarupahamatma Manas Chakshuradirmi Muktahas Svayam Yo Manas Chakshuradir Manas Chakshuradihi Manas Chakshuradir Agamya Swarupaha Sanichopalabdis Swarupahamatmam. And don't forget, Om. So, Hasta Amalaka Stotram. Hasta Amalaka means what? Fruit in the palm of your hand. So, Shankara named his student that because he didn't speak for 12 years and everyone thought he was mute. Shankara came into the village, father brought the son, because he's Brahmin caste, so he's got to speak to earn his living, you see. So why do you speak? So Shankara turns to him and says, who are you? And what's your purpose here? And the boy spoke his first words there. I'm not human. I'm not a god. A being inhabiting celestial realms. I'm not a priest. I'm not a warrior. I'm not a merchant. I'm not a menial worker. I'm not monk, nor householder, nor hermit, nor wanderer. I am the ever-conscious, eternal self, infinite and pervading everything. Okay. That was the first words the boy spoke in that lifetime, brought out by this great seer, Shankaracharya, who was at that time going around all of India establishing the 4 pilgrimage points that are still there today. So that's Hasta Amalaka's story. And in this verse, he says, and later he wrote this stotram evidently, or Shankara did, remove the reflective surface and the form disappears. What remains is the formless essence, the objectless reality. Like this, when the external mind is stilled and focused on reality, what is left is oneness, which is my eternal abode, my true existence. And the next verse is, even bereft of sense experience, mental cognition, and vital functions, that internal reality continues to exist, relying upon nothing. It is that which animates the senses, impels the life force, and awakens the mind. That perpetual being am I, self-effulgent, illuminating the cosmos. I am that light of oneness. So how does my arm move? How do my eyes see? How does my tongue speak? How does my mind think? He's traced it all back to that source. And so that's how he uses his time wisely in the body. That's the sadhana he does in order to effect that. And along the way he encounters any karmas that may have crept into the cracks of his waking, dreaming, and deep sleep consciousness as he went from state to state when Maya tried to foist itself upon him or her. See, so there's little mortar and pestle karmas, they call them in India, that sneak in, or gee, my house looked fine. All of a sudden, there's this little white beetles coming out of the woodwork. You see, what? get out the raid. So, he's talking about his mind. He thought it was pure and perfect. And Sri Ramakrishna used to say that. He said, the white paper looks beautiful, but hold it up to light, oops, lots of dark specks. So those dark specks, can increase as Maya makes its way into the human mind and tries to influence it. So she says, awaken to the insidious presence of Maya. I've given this teaching to Americans before in early days, and they said, you're trying to tell me that there's something problematic here. I don't believe that. It's all going to work out. It's all fine. These are people who join a club, and leave the club later. That's not a commitment to spiritual life and to awakening to your true nature. All the seers will agree with that and tell you. Be about this purification process, and to do it with Shraddha, faith, and with Shuddhi, purification. And take a great Ishtam, take a great ideal who has come to you. Use her mantra if you can get it from a teacher. So Hastamalaka says that beautifully. And that's all in accordance to these middle 3 or 4 there. All about senses and pleasures, enjoyments. And finally she says, scrutinize the link to one's ancestors and break the chain of rebirth with them. That sounds really Buddhistic. I mean, that was Lord Buddha up and down, but that's why the Vedantic era had kind of fallen when 550 years before Jesus. And so Buddha was on the scene there and saw this ancestor worship taking over everything. You know what's taken over everything today? Action. Karma. So that's what we started out the class yesterday saying. Since everyone's doing karma here, and everyone is going to go on doing karma, there's no way you can stop them from working, even if you say work is running your wheels, work is the midday sun that burns the vital of humanities, work doesn't do anything in the end for anyone. Thousands and thousands of acts have never changed the world. You can go on saying all these perfectly true things that the seers have said in the scriptures. But Vivekananda came and said, what you want to do is make a yoga out of it. That's why we have karma yoga. And we started out yesterday with the 2 charts on karma yoga, and all the points we went through, how to faithfully and carefully follow the karma yoga. I mean, read the Gita and you've got it all right there. From the 2nd chapter on, to the first 5 chapters, it's all about karma, how to infuse, how to get knowledge through karma vijnana, how to then give up both work and non-work, or attachment and non-attachment, or pleasure and non-pleasure, how to get to the non-dual state and achieve sannyas, which is what Vivekananda was when he came here, a sannyasin, karma sannyasa yoga. So it all has to do with this neutralization of karma. So the best way you could do that then was, let's turn it into a yoga. Let's all act consciously. Yuck. You think? What a novel idea, as they say. See, let's do it all consciously. And so the Buddhists have come amongst us, and they've begun to talk about that. Do it all mindfully. They've got their own ways of saying it. So, but then you have to sort of make a start, because there's this long habit. And that habit is associated with, as Buddha says, your ancestors. In that day and age, they were the ones that were totally addicted to energy, life force. See, prana it's called. And you use that to get babies. You use that to go from birth to life to death. You use that to transmigrate out of bodies into new bodies. You use that to get from one world to the other, that prana. But it stops working at the 3rd chakra and begins to turn into psychic prana at a higher level. So if you can get a hold then of the psychic prana, Vivekananda said, then you've got grounds for transcending the 3 worlds, Bhur Bhuva Swaha. And as we were just saying, you'll take residence in Tripura's outer city, Mother's feet. And if you got the mantra in this lifetime, that means you've done that already. Lex Sixten used to tell us that. Says, do you realize what happened to you when you got the mantra of Mother? So it's just like she picked you up out of the ocean of samsara and dropped you into the ocean of Ananda. Samsara and Ananda, the two oceans, the ocean of suffering and the ocean of bliss. It's just like, here's the mantra, you're now out of the ocean of suffering and you're in the ocean of bliss. So you swim around in the ocean of bliss for a while and until you realize what happened to yourself. See? That's why people are kind of in a stunned state. Like Jesus, 12 days and 12 nights, a stunned state under the tree, you see, Jhata Samadhi. Buddha in a stunned state, under the bo tree. Trees have something to do with it, I guess, then. Mountains and trees and so forth. So if you didn't consider mountains and trees sacred because they had words and so forth, then you wouldn't choose one to go meditate under. Or like Krishna says in the Gita, sit by a stream with your seat not too high and low. Focus your energy in your head and your love in your heart. Concentrate on me and chant the bijam, Om, and then leave the body. So he means leave the body at the time of death and also leave the body at the time of meditation. That Jewish man who came to me yesterday and had a problem bowing down before images and so forth, I had to tell him that consciousness shifts into other levels, other worlds. I told you all about my dream I had night before last where I all of a sudden just grabbed this power, something of power. I put my hand on and it was just like vaulted up into the sky. And the stars were spinning and I was going through a vortex. And I said to myself in that dream, I don't believe in outer space. What am I doing here? See, there's nothing up here. And then I realized that, wait a minute, you're dreaming. You're not in outer space. You're in inner space. And it was a very profound dream because that's where all the beings are. And sure enough, I came upon a world where beings were there, and I met this person who had died 2 years ago here, and they were like 20-something years old in that world now. And I was speaking to them and so forth. So they got reincarnated in the heaven realms. So the whole thing takes place inside of you. That's the real truth of the matter, or the relative truth of the matter, until you get beyond all worlds, which has also been talked about in Zen and in Advaita Vedanta and Tibetan Buddhism and so forth. So you have to connect your waking to your dream and your dream to deep sleep. If you don't, you wander the worlds. So a little bit about this point of hers. Break free of the cocoon of family life, the link to one's ancestors, and break the chain of rebirth with them. You'll be much better at helping them if you do. If you're born with them, who here has been able to help their parents, you see? The idea was that your parents were helping you, but they were helping you get deeper into Maya is what they were doing. And it took you a long time to get out of it, if you ever did. And then they weren't examples to you for getting out of it. Even if they were good people, they weren't very good examples for getting out of Maya. They didn't know what Maya was. They didn't have a word for it. They were like fish in water that didn't know they were in water. Because it was so transparent, see. So self-realization is you coming to a realization of the truth of your true nature. And there are many methods with which to do that. You need a teacher, you need a path, and you need a method. And how many methods? I've got 320 charts I've created here, probably for 200 different methods that you could take. This one we're having right now is 7-limbed yoga of the Akshi Upanishad. You see, the sun god gave it to Samkriti. Samkriti was a rishi. He went inside, just like I did 2 nights ago, and went up into the billions of stars. He went inside consciously and asked the sun god, "What's Brahmavidya? Tell me your version of it. I mean, you're all light. You should know. Where else would you go to get your darkness removed than the sun god?" So is it just a myth? Is it just kind of a nice story that has analogies and metaphors to it? Or is it an actual reality that the seers went inside themselves and found the source for everything there. And on the way they found penultimate sources that later people called dreams and fantasies and so forth, and the whole societies were telling you they were just figments of your imagination, but you had actually moved inside to the next world, to Mother's second city. And you were becoming acclimatized to it, as if that's where my real body is. So, I mean, the seers know this. They say, this body out here is just, a few pounds of ash in the end. I don't really give it much to do, but my real body I'm holding inside. Sort of like an octopus with arms, it sends its arms out to search the ocean floor, but it's back there with that single eye and one tooth, that the octopus is like, it's Atman, It'll send out bodies, but it knows where its source is. So seers remember their true source. The stories of Lord Vashishta are very good at explaining that. So it's a big one. It needs to be entertained a little longer. Scrutinize the link to your ancestors and wear this body no more, as Buddha said. Just make this the last time you wear a body, at least in ignorance. Finally, she says, scrutinize. Oh, that was what we did. Finally, she says, penultimately, inspect individual thoughts and habits and connect them to actions in past lifetimes. So they had a source. What I'm doing now has a source. And so I have to. So when I had that dream 2 nights ago, I woke up and I thought about it in the waking state, and then I went downstairs to meditate at 6 a.m. and I thought about it some more in my waking state in meditation. So I remember certain things that are beginning to disappear to it. So I mean, if you're not breathing, all of a sudden someone tells you to do pranayama, you breathe, you feel better. You see, you've opened up new channels that were beginning to close. You see, and pretty soon people are walking around, with hardly taking any breath at all in their old age, when old age wouldn't have even come upon them if they had just breathed naturally their whole life, and they could have exited the body consciously even before it was ready to give itself up. So in the same way like that, it's what happens with your dreams. You run nadis, nerve openings to the source of them, and so you can do that with your past karmas too. She's saying, you'll know what's bothering you, that you can't find any solution here on this earth for. You can find it back in your dreams when you connect it to your past lifetimes. Oh, that's where I did that, you see. Or that's where we all decided to form a culture like America. You see, a bunch of us got together, a bunch of idiots, and said, well, let's be Americans, you see. And then we'll be the hero. You see the superheroes now? Can't go to any movies anymore. It's either cartoons or superheroes. See, there's nothing to watch. Talking animals and and big, powerful, buffed-up superheroes. You see. So all of that coming out of this Mayic imagination. It has nothing to do with Dharma and truth whatsoever. And so you study the Dharma and puts you on solid ground, footing again, like the chart we had yesterday. Stability. You want stability. And you can't get that on shifting sand, Jesus said. You have to find the bedrock. So that's actually what my early influence, Lex Ixon, who founded this association, who really kind of was the impetus for this. It was his brainstorm, SRB. So I said in my 20s to him, well, we found our teachers, our path, here we are, we're not going to be monks, what are we going to do? He said, now inspect your thoughts. So your mind is clear now, inspect your thoughts and your habits and connect them to your actions. And you'll find pretty soon that you can't connect some to actions done in this lifetime. It's not going to work. Some of those actions are coming from your sanchita karma. As we were reading the gospel before the live streaming audience joins today, and Sri Ramakrishna said, your prarabdha karma is upon you. And there's no cure for that. It's an arrow shot out of a bow already. So you're going to have to live this prarabdha karma. So that Hastamalaku, whom I just sang about, you see, he asked his teacher, how do we deal with prarabdha karma? Karma that's already upon us. We're already free, but we have this karma of living still to go on with. And Shankara told him, stay close to Brahman. It's the only cure, as it were, for prarabdha karma. Stay close to Brahman. Now, we've been working over the years with children, challenged minds, you see, different diseases and so forth. And I've had some students that have had that kind of children too, so that's the best advice to give them. They're not going to wake up in this lifetime. The karma is already upon them. There's no cure. So keep them close to Brahman. If they can have one memory of somebody, some parents or some group that was talking all the time about divine reality, in a vibration of divine reality in which you did worship on divine reality and fulfilled all of the criterion, that's the impression they'll remember when they die. And then that karma will get annulled after their death, and they'll take on a better birth. So, I mean, this is Krama Mukti, folks. This is she's saying here. 3 attainments to the 3 factors to the attainment of enlightenment. In this day and age, it's not going to be a strike a match in a dark room kind of thing for people. They're going to have to awaken by degrees from the weights of their own self-imposed, self-actuated karma from the past. No God did it, no devil did it. It has to be faced off with in your own self and done away with in your own self, by the self. Finally, she says, meditate with specific aim to dissolve all mental residue that binds the mind to relativity. So if you could say, well, I'm now a resident of Mother's city, and I'm no more a resident of transmigration, Bhur Bhuva Swaha, the 3 worlds with my ancestors. I give that up. So you realize this has to be done here, because you may go on, as far as others are concerned, you may go on acting as if you're a part of this world. But that's what Brigu asked Paramashiva, told him, you're now the great pretender, you're now the great enjoyer, and you're now the great actor. You see, that's how you go on living with prarabdha karma in this body after you've already awakened. Get thee behind me, all of those devilish things, and live in the indivisible state of pure conscious awareness in the eternal moment, like I saw my teacher doing. And he wasn't going back, you see. He had found the truth, and he was abiding in it. The last quote here, which sums up the chart nicely, is, perhaps one practices japa and austerities in this life. We hope so. In the next life, one intensifies that spiritual mood, and in the following advances it further. This spiritual evolution goes on. The moment that one's karmas come to an end, and then one realizes God. This is one's last birth. This, plus the practice of spiritual discipline and time, are the factors in the attainment of spiritual knowledge. So I read that in one of the books on Holy Mother, and a chart was right there for me. See, the 3 factors of enlightenment. Let's put them down. Let's list the bullet points about them as listed in the revealed scriptures, and let's put it up as a chart and show everyone. So it's karma and kama, you see. Karma and sadhana and kala, rather, that you're up against. So scrutinize events in time, practice to cut time away, and as you do so, your karmas will disappear. Now in the remaining 10 minutes, I'm told, and we took up that 19th sloka. One's perception of reality becomes clear only in the due course of time. The sun god tells Samkriti, who's now, thousands of years later, left it behind for us to read. The enlightened soul, reaching the 3rd stage, experiences this for himself. So reaches the third stage of Akshi Upanishad's 7 stages of yoga. We know about the 8 limbs of yoga. We know about Sadhanga yoga. We know about the Eightfold Path. We know about different systems, like I was saying, different methods. But this is what Samkriti brought back from the sun god in his deep meditation. And he says, these slokas that we're studying right now are all about achieving non-attachment after you give up the idea of transmigration. Coming and going is all mere nonsense. See, you don't come and go. You're in one place all the time, and the soul is actionless. I just chanted that at the beginning of the class. See, Brahman is pure and perfect, actionless and divine, see, and formless. See, so it sounds like a true statement to me. Now, shouldn't I meditate on it and realize it, or should I just walk out? That's some words that went by my ears, you see. Because if I know that Brahman is actionless, then I'm going to have to ask, what's this transmigratory process then, and who's going through it? Because that's the Buddhist way, and it's also Ramana Maharshi's way, Atmavichara, who am I? But you can't just say who, you become like an owl or something. See, but who am I needs to be attended by what am I not? See, so what I am not is a transmigrating soul, and what my true nature. I got to know that by studies with my acharya, with my teacher, dharma basically, because morality wasn't doing it for me in its present state, particularly in this day and age. So I got a teacher in a path, and I gave up the idea that I move from birth to death. I mean, you can see how subtle it is, because the Upanishad itself is talking about karmas from past lifetimes, you see. So if you didn't understand that right, you could say, well, these karmas are real. But if you have the Advaita, the non-dual reality of your eternal perfection with you, when these things are said, it gets filtered through that. See? And otherwise, you're going to hear, like Ramakrishna before we started class in the gospel, people, you shouldn't think of yourself as a sinner. You shouldn't read books that talk too much about sin, because they're foisting some sort of misconception on you from a state of consciousness in which sin is considered real, actual, and they don't even believe in past lifetimes. So it's really unfair. Well, how did I get these sins then if I haven't lived before? As I certainly didn't commit any bad sins in this lifetime. Who said that? She says, why am I getting these rashes, and why am I getting malaria and so forth? I didn't commit any problem in this lifetime. I mean, she probably could just be saying, I should be having states of divine ecstasy, not states of divine eczema, you see, something like that, you see. Where do these rashes come from? Because it came from her, people who were touching her feet, people who came to her to get rid of their karmas. And she was pure and perfect, born that way, Nityasiddha. So Sankriti there is giving you a 7-stage yoga. That's how we would conclude Sloka 19. Let's put a capper on Sloka 19. I've said enough about it. 20 says, non-attachment then, because he doesn't miss a beat or even take a breath, the 3rd stage, non-attachment is of 2 kinds. And listen to this. He says, the general non-attachment is non-involvement with objects. You say to yourself, I am neither agent nor enjoyer, neither the sublater nor the sublated. Everything, be it pleasure or pain, is fashioned by my prior deeds, or everything is under the sway of the Lord. I do nothing in regard to it. And that's where we get this next sloka. Enjoyments and non-enjoyments are dread diseases. Possessions are great disasters. All contacts just promote separation. Sufferings are diseases of your thoughts. I mean, it's sobering, and at the same time it's very revealing. if you were to change your thinking about your sufferings, change your thinking about karma, about rebirth, about transmigration, it's just all you would need. It's just to change your thinking about it. A 2% shift away from the conventional way of things God explained to you as you grew up, with parents who were not aware of the Dharma, not aware of their past lifetimes, and had no spiritual teachers, and abandoned the church because religion had fallen. I'm describing my own parents, as good as they were. So here, when it says the general non-attachment is non-involvement in objects, I brought down to you to see this chart, which we had up yesterday but didn't quite get to. Natural renunciation in 4 phases. Now, this is a teaching, one Swami told me, that you should not give to householders. So, I hope none of you are householders. I hope you're like, I'm not priest, warrior, merchant, or menial worker. I'm neither monk, householder, hermit, nor wanderer. You're something else entirely, okay? You can't label me, sorry. Because basically this teaching is from the Jivan Mukta Viveka, and that scripture is very, very non-dual, and it's only taught to monks by senior monks. So I went through it because he told me to. He obviously didn't think I was a householder either. So I went through it, and I found certain teachings that are really cusp, monastic to householder kind of teachings, and this was one of them. If Sri Ramakrishna says you should renounce the world, and Jesus says you should renounce the world, and Buddha says you should renounce the world, and so forth and so on, and these were people that lived in the world with bodies, and not all of them were monks, then there probably should be some explanation of what a person living in the world, whatever you call them, how they should deal with the world, or what kind of renunciation that would end up to be. So in the case of the scripture, basically it says this: renounce first the desire for enjoyment, then the inner mental desires that foster it. Keep your pure desires, such as desire for friendship, but then practice giving up even that, and seek knowledge alone. Finally, giving up the desire for knowledge, abide in what remains, and give up that by which you renounce. You're not like leaving any back door or any opening anywhere for you. I have to follow this, and I'm not going to get off the track. And in the end, it's like he's saying here, enjoyments and non-enjoyments are both dread problems, so I have to not fall for one just because I gave up the other, which is, like one of the Vedanta teachers I attend to say, it was like the inchworm goes along, you see, and then you see it and it sticks out its front, and it's looking for a purchase point, see. So you can put a stick up there and it'll grab on, you see, and put the rest of its body over there, see. So that's what he's actually describing, how the ignorant soul searches for its next parents and its next body. It inches along after death and it's looking for a place. It sees people copulating, and chooses its gender, and then attaches to the parents. Chooses its parents. Tibet is good for explaining these kinds of things. But what I'm using it here is that you could give up one thing and attach to another thing. So they want you to, one by one, leave behind these grosser attachments. If the whole world is just spriha, as Krishna says, or trishna, Krishna talks about trishna, see. So it's all based in desire. And so it's sort of like the first noble truth of Vedanta. If the first noble truth of Buddhism is, all is suffering, then the first noble truth of Vedanta is all is desire. So it's these enjoyments and non-enjoyments that are binding people into the body. Or you could say, well, I could just enjoy for the time being, but you're not accounting for the enjoyments having an effect on your mind, because with enjoyment comes suffering, and the sufferings fix themselves in your subtle consciousness, in your subtle body. So you leave the body in fear of suffering, in fear of death. That's a kind of suffering. And you're attracted back to the body by anticipation of enjoyment. That's not a good way to transmigrate. If you have to transmigrate at all, you should do it as a free soul. Wear this body for the last time in ignorance. Come back as a bodhisattva or something. So this is not the transmigratory process that, if it were true at all, is something that you would want to attach to, in stages like that. You should rather give it up in stages. So here it is kind of put in better terms. First, Vishaya Vasana. Vasana means attachment. And so I remember every lecture I heard from Swami Sheshananda, Vasana! It's like, when he wanted to wake his congregation up, because many of them were nodding, you see, Vasana! And they'd all sit straight up, It's like yesterday I said, people should just write me and say, "Dear my guilty conscience." They shouldn't call me Babaji anymore. So, "Dear my guilty conscience," see, because that's actually what they then end up reading, this tale of woes, like Holy Mother said. They never asked me for enlightenment. They never asked me questions about the dharma. They just asked me for things. They asked me for release from suffering, but how can you get release from suffering when you're still attached to pleasure? They don't understand these things, you see. So all the teachings about being a witness, or all the teachings about detachment, or all the teachings about renunciation, all the teachings about even-mindedness, all the teachings about just mindfulness, are pretty much based in how you conduct yourself day to day, isn't it? You conduct yourself like a fearful person, or running for the next attachment, you see, sort of like your ancestors running for their next life, out of fear, you see. Like, the fear is what? I do not exist. But the first teaching you heard when you came to Buddhism or Vedanta was, all existence is. There's no such thing as non-existence. Everything is. Everything is. Unfortunately, that's also true with Maya. It also exists all the time. It has to produce name, form, time, space, and karma. So, are you going to bring Maya with you into every lifetime, or you're going to just use Maya's, to get a form, to get a name, so you can do your business, you see, do your good works and so forth. So, Vishaya Vasana, that word Vasana, Swami Sheshananda would always put it together with samskara. Bharshana samskara. So your impressions in your mind that have brought you here, whether it's to the world or to his ashram, were from your desires. Good desires, bad desires, mixed desires. So you wake up to that fact. Spriha, the whole world is based in desire. Your mother and father wanted you. There's their desire to have you as a child, as a baby. Women have those desires, and men do too. So you were brought into the world by desire, and it would be hard not to explain that these desires seem natural to people. But natural and dharmic might be two different things. Like Jaya Shri Ramakrishna Bhagavan Taruna Maya Jaya Krishna Kripa Nidana. First verse of that stotram says, Shri Ram went to Bodh Gaya, and he meditated there in the city of Buddha's enlightenment, and got a vision of Vishnu, who said, "I'm going to be born as your child." Meanwhile, back in Jairambati, or Kamarpakur, his wife, Chandramani, was meditating in the Shiva temple every day, asking for a child. So in India, even in more modern times, you did austerities to get children. They weren't your desires. You wanted to bring children in so that they could be a great help to the suffering of others. That was your main point as a dharmic householder. You set this up to be that way. It wasn't some roulette wheel. I met my wife at a bar, and then we divorced 2 years later. What'd you expect, But it was just really precognized and predetermined. It was you doing this. You didn't ask God for a child. You say, oh my God, you really want one? So this was your desire, and you found a partner in that desire. So there are desires of two kinds. Basically, that's what's being said here. There are attachments of two kinds. There are desires of two kinds. Ones that bind you into the world, and the other one frees you from the world process. That's one of Holy Mother's teachings. So she says, back to the Jivan Mukti Viveka, he says in there, give up base desires for sense objects. Why? Because they're empty. What do you mean? They're empty of substance. Well, yeah, science has proven that. What else are they empty of? The ability to fulfill you. You mean I can't have pleasure? Right. Well, I think I'll give them up. What is more, their weights on you. See, they cause you residues in your mind. See, I mean, I've said it so many times. It's still one of my favorite stories. A camel eats thorny bushes till its gums bleed, and then when it dies, what do you think it's going to do? It's going to look for camel parents again, because it has the taste of blood and thorny bushes in its desire mind. And that's why so many camels are being produced, and cows, and horses, and so forth. I was like, one of my students was on retreat one time, and I was sitting with the window behind me, so he was watching me, but his eyes would wander off to the herd of horses on the farm behind the window. So he came up to me break, he says, gee, I've been watching those horses during the first morning class, and I've been watching them during the afternoon class, and even at night before the sun goes down. All they ever do is eat grass. All day, all they do is eat grass. So I told him, you mean you weren't listening to the teachings all that time? But I mean, that is a teaching right there. Animals come back as animals based on desire, and people do too. And so how are you going to attenuate that desire? First step would be give up desire for the senses attached to the objects. It's not noble to be that way. It wastes your time, and it exacerbates into compromise, laziness, procrastination, and so you never get anything really beneficial done for yourself or for others, and you're a bad example to your children. So this has to be the first stage, Vishaya Vasana. You see, Vishaya is desires, Vasana is that, Vishaya is senses, and Vasana is desire. So you have desires for sense objects. The second stage here is called Manasa Vasana. That's where you trace the outer to the inner. Your manasa is your mind. So it's very yogic, which I'll show you after the break. It's basically these outer desires are based on your mind's desires. Your mind was there before your body, and it produced your body. Your mind produces as many bodies as it wants, using the prana. And so it will, if you want to root out desires right at the basis, then you find out their source. It was in your mind. So that's the second stage, and we will talk about that after the break.